Way more than you and I do.
No,
If you had any inkling
it was
of what
just
your future might
when I
be,
pulled your name tag out, I
throw it
just,
together and let's say thousands of dollars. And a little bit of time. And a little bit of time. Sure. No. That's terrible. That's too far. Can't go wrong. You gotta take something, but I might as well take it. It's just wild.
it's nothing like
All right, it's 5:45. We'll call the meeting to order. Thanks everyone for being here tonight at our special board meeting of January 26, 2026. Let's start with roll call.
Amy Riddle Swanson,
Here.
Abe Smith,
Here.
Dominique Stewart,
Here.
Rachel Henderson,
Here.
Dale Dalkey,
Dale, you there? Here. Good job.
Amber Kirsting,
Here.
Emily Hines,
Here.
Michelle Dupree,
Here.
Angela Wolf.
Here. All right, we have a quorum. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And our mission statement. The school district of the Menomonie area, by embracing the unique needs and using the strengths of our diverse community, is dedicated to preparing all students to become lifelong learners, caring individuals, and responsible citizens. Do we have any proposed changes to the agenda order tonight? All right, seeing none, we have no recommendations or commendations this evening, and no one signed up for community comments. I should say, backing up, we do have some commendations. We have a whole pile here of beautiful cards of thank you to all of us school board members, and also apparently I haven't opened them yet, but some posters. So in the break between our open and closed sessions, I thought we could distribute these and take a look at them. And thank you to the staff that brought them in here tonight, and thank you to everybody who helped make them possible. I've looked at a few just while I'm sitting here, and they're really special. Appreciate that.
I'd like to make one comment on that. Everyone, when you see one that's mostly pink marker, and it says Amelia really weird, my granddaughter's teacher sent me a picture and said, be watching for it, so I had to find it.
Okay, okay, good luck. We'll find it. All right. On to our personnel consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the personnel consent agenda. Hines moves. Second. Motion by Emily, second by Dominique. Did you want to say something?
I do. I just want to point out that we did receive 2 final retirement requests. The deadline is now passed, so we are not anticipating any more. But both Mrs. Tennyson and Ms. Weinstein at Wakanda Elementary School, they're both second grade teachers, have submitted their retirement request. They have done a tremendous job in our school district, and like our other retirees, they're going to be greatly missed. Really, we wish they could stay, but we also are very happy for them and their families. My kids went through, and I was so impressed. So, like Rachel likes to joke, it'd be nice to vote no, but best wishes to Ms. Tennyson and Ms. Weinstein.
Any questions or discussion on the personnel consent agenda? As Joe mentioned, we have 2 retirements this evening. All right, let's vote.
Did I vote for you, Dale? I vote yes.
Thanks, Dale. And motion passes unanimously. On to our action agenda. First up, we have an action to approve our 30-year capital improvement plan. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, Amy.
Second, Amber.
And do we have any changes to what we reviewed at the last meeting?
There are no changes. I had a nice conversation with Kevin Tomaszewski today. He's already chomped at the bit. He said, let me know right away tomorrow because I have work ready to start. So no changes since the presentation 2 weeks ago.
Great. Any questions or discussion on the updates to the 30-year capital improvement plan? All right, let's vote.
Dale, how do you vote, yes?
And motion passes unanimously. Next up, we have our 2025-26 budget revisions. I'll entertain a motion.
So move, Amy.
Second.
Motion by Amy, second by Michelle. Any changes to the budget revisions from what we looked at 2 weeks ago?
No changes.
Any questions or discussion on the budget revisions? Okay, let's vote.
Yes.
Thanks, Dale. And motion passes unanimously. Moving right along, onto our discussion agenda. First up, we have our student enrollment update.
Tony Kwiski is not able to be here tonight, so she can answer some additional questions if there are any. But you can see that we loaded in the preliminary enrollment count from January 9th. There still is more work to be done because Stout was out of session, so that report will need to be amended. There are some situations where students may not have been counted yet, but we think it's pretty close. If you'll notice, we also loaded in the enrollment reports from last September, the previous January, and then also the September 2024. Comparing January 2026 to January 2025, it's about 43 student difference in terms of less students this year. We are projecting some decline in enrollment, and we've talked about that with our budgeting process and our staffing process. It is something that we continue to watch very carefully. I'd be a little bit hesitant to get too concerned at this point because, again, the report will be amended, but it's something we'll have to watch as we move forward.
Any questions or discussion on the student enrollment update? I appreciate having all of the back information. It really helps to put the numbers in context. Is this something we vote on? We just. If there's no questions, we will move on to summer school discussion. Every board member's favorite part of the year is talking about summer school. And I know we have the illustrious Stacey Lee here tonight.
One of the coldest weeks on record. Let's
Let's think about summer.
All right, summer school is staying true to what we have. It's working really well. So you can see that some of the dates are similar, the format's similar. We're moving AIM Art Camp to 4 days instead of 5. We found that a lot of the students go to Boys and Girls Club and they have their Friday funds, and it's one of the last ones of the year, so they usually go to a water park or somewhere like that. So we have really low enrollment that day. So we're just going to go to 4. We think that's still very doable, and students can still have the full experience of art camp. And that's what they're used to during the week for our regular programming is Monday through Thursday, so shouldn't confuse families very much at all if we go to Monday through Thursday. Since I last put this on, we added a snake discovery presentation in collaboration with the library. We're going to add that on after the SDMA environmental site, so students can choose to stay after and go to that presentation, and other people that don't want to go to the environmental site are still welcome to come to the presentation at River Heights at 1 o'clock.
So that's kind of fun to coordinate with the library on that. So that will all take place at River Heights. Everything that you see about online registration, we try and make it available for people to have time to look at the registration booklet, and then we open up the online registration. We also open up for people that don't have access to computers. They can start making appointments up at ASC on the 23rd, so they have plenty of time to get theirs written out and have access to everything that they need before we help them register their students. We have that late registration window for those that may have missed online, and that's paper copy. We ended on June 3rd so that we can have accurate class rosters for the teachers, and so we can order enough supplies and things like that. So that's why it ends on the 3rd. You can see our partnerships are growing. Some are continuing. I think it's great that our community really looks at this as a community effort. We want to provide what's best for their students throughout the whole summer, and to coordinate with our community has been something I've really enjoyed in kind of looking for those opportunities. Staff interests. I emailed that out on January 19th. As the 21st, I had 80 respondents just from our school district employees. Now that's up to over 100 of returners, and that includes paras, teachers, and things like that. But I have a good rate and have had really good outcome with having SDMA employees teaching our students during summer school. So pretty lucky that way. We're offering some new courses. A lot of the staff have been excited and kind of giving me their ideas. Everything from chess to fun in nature to get up and get moving, where they go to different playgrounds and things like that. So lots of great ideas, but also looking at that academic piece and looking at Act 20, working with Brian and Tara on that. So summer school is off and running. I think it's going to be another great year, and hopefully the new opportunities and new classes will get people excited too. So we had nice positive feedback from families about what we offered in the last year. So, any questions?
Do you know offhand how many positions you need filled? So you said we had 80 and then it's over 100, and I'm curious what the...
Yeah, I think last year I hired a little over 100.
Awesome.
But then you have to look at if they're signing up for 1 session, 2 sessions, if they have their teacher's license. So there's just a lot going into it, but I think it's a great start for what we have. We're a little bit over what we were last year, so I'm hopeful that it will go well. Yeah.
Any other questions for Stacy or discussion on summer school programming for 2026?
I would like just to repeat in case people are watching online and they want to have their calendars ready. So online registration will open Tuesday, April 7th at noon and close May 15th at 4 p.m. People who would like to make an appointment can start making appointments March 23rd at the AFC here to reserve a device for online registration. But for everybody, online registration will open at noon on Tuesday, April 7th.
And when do you anticipate having the lineup available for people to start looking at what's there?
The registration booklet will come out around spring break.
Okay,
So we usually send it at home before families leave on spring break.
great. Wonderful. I'm excited already.
We're already getting calls. So we're going to have off June 29th through July 3rd. That's our off week. A lot of families try to plan vacations and things like that. So it was kind of tricky this year. We could have gone after or before, but we did the before because that's usually what we do. So.
If there are no other questions or discussion, thank you so much for being here tonight. I don't know if this is an appropriate time. I noticed in the update to the work plan, there was talk about, you mentioned, you have Rossback Museum listed here, and there was a mention of their mini camps that they offer in the afternoon. And I was curious if you had ever discussed like busing to like some of the other opportunities that happen in the afternoons.
So I checked with the bus company just to see where their drop-offs are, and they have a drop-off right at the ball fields.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of coordinating with Rashbach if they could walk over. They're limited to like 15 to 20 students, so Tom's thinking that it would be fine for our busing for those because it's only one night a week. It's a Thursday, I think they're gonna have classes, so even then, a lot of people pick up because they're gonna leave for the weekend or things like that. So we've looked at those opportunities, but they're offering where you have to drop off in August because we wanted more opportunities for students in August when we don't have regular summer school. So there's going to be more opportunities for that too, but it won't have busing.
Right, that's great to hear because I know that they kind of started more programming last summer, and they were really awesome programming. So it's
Yeah, and I wanted to coordinate with them this year, so it was after summer school, and they readily agreed with that. So it's going to be a good partnership, I think.
That's always appreciated and definitely asking for a friend here. Anything else on summer school discussion? All right, then we can move on to review of the strategic planning goals and major activities for 2025-26. So a fairly lengthy document here. Do you want to get us started on that?
Yes, thanks, Rachel. As the board knows, we have our strategic plan with 5 pillars of work. Had a great strategic planning process, and under each pillar we have a number of goals, 5-year goals. But then the way our process works here in Menomonie, we also identify annual goals, and we put them into what we call the district work plan. So there's over 30 goals that we are focused on this year, goals under each of the pillars. And like we did at the end of the first quarter, for the second quarter update, I'm going to ask the directors and principals to help. And what we're going to do is we're going to focus on one of the goals, and we certainly can take questions on any of the goals and any of the progress being made. But we want to make sure that we, spend enough time and go into a little bit more depth instead of just having surface level discussion. We'll have a little more depth by focusing in on one of the goals. So for instance, the first pillar in our strategic plan is preparing all of our students. And the pillar 1 goal is that we will ensure that all students will be career, college, and life ready upon graduation. So to talk to us about one of the goals under pillar 1, we'll have Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Brian Seguin, go ahead and give us that update.
All right, so as Joe said, our first goal is on supporting our students, and the one that we're going to focus in as a starting point is a little bit further down the list in pillar 1. One of the goals is to work with faculty committee to develop, communicate, and identify supports for families leading to improved student readiness for 5K and for school. And really what I want to talk a little bit about is a collaborative process that's in works, and we've been making good progress this last couple of months, working with both our teachers of 4-year-old kindergarten as well as 5-year-old kindergarten to take a look at what that would look like. And in collaboration with the staff from those 2 grade levels, as well as our early childhood special education teachers and our OTs, we've begun putting together a document that will be shared with parents as part of the registration process for 4K that takes a look at dispositions for readiness for school. And I want to reiterate with that one that it is not about academic skills such as counting and letter identification at that point in time, but it's really more about habits of mind that will set a student up to be successful in a 4-year-old kindergarten setting, so that we help families to identify what that might look like and some things that they could be working on to help support their child at home. And then along with that work, our 5K teachers have been collaborating on the development of a document that takes a look at then what does that look like when a student transitions into a kindergarten classroom as a 5-year-old. Again, recognizing that not all students participate in a 4K setting, and then that will be information that we made available to our current 4K students and families as they transition into 5K. It's been, I think, a really good discussion up to this point. The goal is not to have a family look at that information and say, well, my child can't do these things yet. or they may not be at a point where I think they might be partway into that grade level, but it's more about, it's not to, essentially say, well, then your child shouldn't come to 4K or 5K, but it's really to help start a conversation with families at that point in time. So at this point, happy to take any questions on that, but that's the quick update.
For one thing, thank you for bringing up the power yet. I'd like to see that used in any form that I can see it used. I'm curious to know just one example of habits of mind.
Sure. So as we go through, so when you take a look at, one would be curiosity and wonder. Really, it's a learner's mindset. So we talk about, that power of yet. Students being asked or being able to ask questions like why or how does something happen, those types of things. Other ones that we're taking a look at relate to emotional regulation or resilience, their ability to take a look at doing some things on their own or making those attempts, and then social cooperation, the idea of transitioning from independent play to parallel play to cooperative play. Not sure if I answered your question or not.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sometimes questions bring more questions. But I won't ask you right now.
Okay.
Can you say a little bit more about how these will be used? So do you envision this is something 4K teachers are going to use to make kind of maybe proactively in shaping the learning environment, but also in thinking about whether they might recommend another year of preschool for a kid? Is that?
So the one that we're providing for 4K is something that we provided to parents at the registration process to help families to take a look at, these are the types of things that help indicate that their child is school ready. And then during the 4K year, it's just one more way of helping to ensure that we're working to reinforce the skills that students need to be successful in a 5K classroom, and to serve around discussion with families as we go through conferencing. And it definitely could lead to readiness and whether or not an additional year of 4K could be beneficial or helpful, but really to help increase communication back and forth with families on what those expectations are and readiness skills as well.
In your conversations with the 4K providers in particular, and I guess the 5K teachers as well, does this seem to represent a departure from what is typically happening, or is it more like codifying what they're already doing?
So I'm going to say the latter. One of the things that we are finding is we have an increasing number of scenarios where families may be reaching out and saying, what are the things that my child needs to be able to do to be successful? Kind of around that, we don't know what we don't know. And I'll say, it's never a bad time to start a conversation about what school readiness looks like. And our 4K teachers, have really embraced the idea of putting something uniform together from a 4K standpoint, as have our 5K teachers as well. And then our next step will be in our April PD day. Our 4 and 5K teachers will be reconvening to take a look at this and finalize some of the 5K steps.
Great.
Rachel, if I could follow up, and we've had discussions before. Part of the issue is just how society has changed a bit, and we've talked about how there's more examples of students coming to school where they may not have had any experience using a scissors. They may not know how to hold a pencil or a crayon. And I was always one of those kids that didn't hold a pencil right, but it's not that. It's just more like they simply don't have the gross motor skills because so many of them are on devices now instead of having those opportunities to color or to write letters and things like that. And it doesn't mean that students aren't going to be accepted into school if they can't write the alphabet. It's just trying to give some guidance Also, Brian mentioned some of the cooperative play. We're seeing more and more students coming to school with less experience playing cooperatively. So much of it now is on their own, and again, a lot of it has to do with technology and gaming and things like that. So I think it's good timing for this. And again, it's not to put pressure on kids, it's not to put pressure on families, but some things that might have seemed more like a intuition or accepted all over, I think naming some of those items might be helpful for families.
Do you folks have any other questions or discussion in particular on this goal first? And then I think now would be the time to broadly ask about any of the other goals under pillar 1. All right. I was curious about the multi-level systems of support at the middle school. There's several recent updates on that, and I was curious if somebody could elaborate a little bit on what the like changes to WIN or changes to how the MLSF is used there have played out.
Perfect, and tonight's a perfect night for it because Stacy Lee, our Director of Academic Services, is also filling in really for this whole year so far as middle school assistant principal. And it's been perfect timing. She's been very active with the middle school teachers. So Stacy, you're the expert. Take it away.
I will gladly take it away. This was already on my agenda to do even before I became the interim assistant principal, which I'm enjoying, by the way. Lovely school. So, MLSS, there's not a lot of change to WIN itself. We were looking more at the systematic way that we can go about placing students in WIN and making it more uniform to what the district is expecting, so it's not person dependent. So a lot of our time has been spent on, okay, they have a document for this, but can we make it into one place where we can know what we're doing? So new staff with onboarding can know how to place a student in WIN. What is the purpose? So really just coming together and making it more of a building-wide system instead of dependent on grade level or teams or things like that. It's really given me an opportunity to go into the teams, and we've talked about EduClimber and how data is already in there, where they wouldn't have to create their own data walls and have it in a Google Doc where only certain people have it. It's current, so just kind of making things easier and more systematic as far as what children need beyond the core classrooms. We've also looked at encore recovery, making sure students have that, because we know some students really come to school because they want art, music, and phys ed, and just making sure that they get that, even if they have low academic achievement and are really working on that they at least get it a couple times a year. So just kind of looking at how things were going. I think you can tell by their report card that the middle school is doing things well, but we just wanted to make this a systems change so that if someone new does come in, they have that in order and it's easy to understand.
Thank you. I didn't realize I was putting you in the hot seat with that question, so but thank you
I
for
just
that.
learned about that this afternoon.
Makes sense, good. Go ahead.
Okay, so all of the data, and I've noticed some new data is going up into EduClimber lately, not by seeing EduClimber, but by reading the notes here. I'm curious to know, once everything's in EduClimber and that data, and I know there's a time and a place for it. However, I also know that, like on the example of Eureka Math, just because it's something that comes to the top of my head immediately, the assessment data going up into EduClimber, there's typically one question on a standard, maybe two, but for the most part, one question. So how much emphasis is being placed on that data, on the data wall, as opposed to, or including the teacher's input? Because what they see every day and observe can be very different, or what they get on an exit ticket, or than the actual data, because you can put all of that on EduClimber.
Correct. The thing that we like about EduClimber is that it's current data. And it can be from previous years as well. So you can look at, all of it in one place without going back and searching for it. But also, it's not just, curriculum-based or how they're sequencing through Eureka and math and things like that. It has forward, it has STAR, all of it is within that, and you can move it around and do some things. But then they talk about it during their teen time, so that's all the teachers looking at how the child is doing in all of the classes. So they have time to talk about it, but it kind of gives them a starting point as to, oh, I see that this is kind of an ongoing problem or things like that. But yes, it's a discussion, but at least it's giving them another tool to look at and something that it's not just placing kids. There's like justification and talk about it. Sometimes, as a teacher, that can be hard to just come in and talk about a student. So sometimes having that system there and saying, okay, we got to look at this, and it just starts a discussion.
So it can just be a launching point for future discussion, like, okay, we see this need, let's take this exit ticket, I'll give it, and then come back and talk more about this.
Yeah, they've used it for reteaching. If they've noticed across, the teams that a particular unit was difficult for students for their exit test or things like that. So yeah, I think it's been nice, and it's not dependent on one person. We were kind of finding that one person really liked the data, and then they kind of take that over, but they're getting burnt out. So now we've kind of made it systematic so everybody can come with the same data and don't have to be an expert, but can understand it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, that was great. Other questions regarding any of the goals under Pillar 1? All right, we can move on to Pillar 2.
Okay, so Pillar 1 was preparing our students. Pillar 2 is about supporting our students. And again, you can see there's all sorts of different goals in Pillar 2. The last goal in Pillar 2 talks about tiered levels of SEL instruction, mental wellness resources for students and families to be reviewed and updated with changes presented to the board. And Mr. Drake will talk a little bit about some of the second quarter work at the high school, particularly the Mustang Strong initiative.
Thank you. So last spring, we had a couple of community individuals, Carl Palmer and Becky Kinnear, talk to myself and a couple of our student services members about a project that they were aware of, the Green Bandana Project, which has connections to a lot of different universities and some high schools nationwide. And it's about school-based mental health awareness and suicide prevention. But they wanted to know if we were interested in learning more about it and potentially implementing some or all of it at the high school. So we met last spring, I think a couple of times, and thought it would be a helpful program for our students. And we made the decision to, I guess the first question for us was like, where do we include it within the school? And we made the decision to include the initiative within our Link Crew. The Link Crew is our 9th grade transitional program, so we have 11th and 12th grade students that are trained and then help our 9th graders transition into high school, and we wanted to add this as a part of that. So the students kind of jumped on board with that right away. They wanted to rebrand it, and that's where Mustang Strong comes from. And we had 2 different trainings for those juniors and seniors in the summer. One was by like an outside connected person with Mr. Palmer and Ms. Kinnear. And then second training was with MHS staff. So they had that portion. They informed and trained, I wouldn't say trained, but informed our high school staff at one of our early staff meetings about the initiative as well. We spent some time connecting with Baraboo High School. They've implemented this there as well, and they're probably a couple of years ahead of us, and so we wanted to learn a little bit more about what they're doing and what worked and maybe areas that they would do differently if they had to start over. Ultimately, our Link Crew leaders, so those 11th and 12th graders, presented the information to our 9th grade students during study halls. And they do periodic presentations to those 9th graders throughout the school year, but this happened to be one of them. They had a short video and then some talking points in that session. And then our MHS staff every year from Student Services goes into our health classes, which is a freshman class as well. And talks about QPR, which is a question, persuade, refer protocol in case there are some suicidal concerns from a student, and kind of pair those initiatives together. We included information and announcements on TVs. The kind of public side of it is the green bandanas can be displayed or visible, whether it's on a backpack, a Chromebook case. We had bracelets as well that kids could wear that would show support for mental health concerns, and then also kind of a symbol that, hey, if you need some help or someone to talk to, that student can be a resource. Of course, our students, the juniors and seniors who are trained, one of the biggest questions we had right away was if students do bring up concerning, comments or thoughts, what are those next steps for kids who maybe not are fully trained to help next? And one of the best things that we heard right away was getting in contact with professionals, getting in contact with a teacher or a counselor, but being that potential kind of middle person to help that and just really, again, show support for our students. So far, it's gone pretty well. We have a follow-up meeting with Carl and Becky this week, so we'll talk more about like how it's gone and what some successive next steps might be coming up here in the second semester.
Thanks for going into detail on that program. That's really wonderful. So I appreciate the effort that the high school staff has put into it. Do folks have questions on that particular initiative or that particular goal? And if not, and any discussion on any of the goals in Pillar 2? We're getting off light on this one. And then we're on to Pillar 3.
Okay, so Pillar 1 was preparing our students. Pillar 2 was supporting our students. And now we're on to Pillar 3, which is engaging our staff. And again, there's a number of goals in regards to engaging our staff. As the board knows, one of our biggest goals this year is working on teacher compensation. And Samantha Hoyt, our Director of HR, she'll go ahead and kind of give the board an update on where things stand there. Sam?
Thank you. So the Teacher Compensation Committee has met 4 times during this school year. And after discussing some key considerations, the committee has narrowed the focus to 4 recommendations. And I believe the board has been updated on those as we've kind of worked through this process. The recommendations were shared with all teaching staff to solicit some feedback. And we're in the process of evaluating that feedback and kind of moving on to discuss some of the recommendations with the QIC group. We have a meeting on February 1st, so we'll be bringing those to the QIC group, as well as coming back together with the compensation committee so that we can talk with them about some of the additional feedback that we've received from the teachers. And then we'll share our finalized recommendations with the board at a future meeting, but wanted to kind of make sure that we were all on the same page and have everything in place. One of the things that we're discussing that has come up is paid leave and flexibility, value of paid leave. And so one of the things that I just wanted to give an update on, so all staff, we're allowed to have 15 days of paid leave. All staff receive 15 days of paid leave. 2 of those days can be used for personal days. And one of the things that we've done in an effort to provide more flexibility is to allow an exchange of 15 days of paid leave for a personal day. And they can do that for up to 3 with that piece, so a total of 5 days that 5 personal days that someone could take. And so what we found is that just with this year, that's with the start of this school year, at this time we had 13 people who have requested to use a total of 390 paid leave days, and that would be for a total of 26 additional personal days being granted. So we do believe that flexibility has been welcomed and appreciated, and people have been able to take some additional time if they need it. One of the other updates is just on the wellness incentive that the board approved, I believe, at our last meeting. And so at this time, we have 32 staff members that have completed the wellness requirements or the wellness activities for the incentive. And 20 family plans, so 20 people that are on family plans at $1,000 each is $20,000. And then 12 single plans at $500 each is $6,000. It's split right down the middle. 16 people have chosen HSA contributions and 16 have chosen a cash payout. So I'm not sure what that data says, but I thought it was interesting.
It says it was good to have the option.
I agree with that completely. So that's where we're at with compensation. And yeah, if you have any questions.
Questions specifically related to the compensation committee? Looking forward to, oh, go ahead.
Just to clarify, when you say 15 days to get a personal day, does that mean that those are 15 days that they're not taking?
Right, they're exchanging 15 of their paid leave days, so they can accrue up to a certain number, and it really depends on when you were hired. Some can accrue up to 120 days and some to 90, so then they can take 15 of those accrued days and exchange them for one personal day. And we can do that for up to 3 times in a year, and that's in addition to the 2 that they can use as part of their paid leave.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I just want to say, I appreciate the process that you described. It sounds like, making a draft plan, getting feedback, refining it, getting more feedback. I really appreciate it. It sounds like teachers have had, or staff have had opportunity to weigh in on that, so that's wonderful. It also sounds like it's really responding to a need that teachers were identifying. Any questions on other goals in Pillar 3?
I just had a question. The use of culturally relevant instruction in the SDMA will be evaluated and opportunities for continued growth and improvement. And I appreciate all of the amazing things that are happening. Mr. Kennedy brought folks or talked about what they're doing at River Heights, and then we had the middle school bring their Hmong heritage trunk. I was just curious, how do we determine a baseline for how folks are interpreting what that looks like or what it means?
Okay, we're back to Pillar 2, right?
That was under Pillar 3.
It is under Pillar 3. It's on page...
Sorry, I'm just trying to find my spot here. Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay. Yes. Brian, do you have any comments on that in terms of the culturally relevant instruction?
So to clarify, you're asking how we're establishing, or if we're establishing a baseline?
Correct. So how do we know where we're at to where we want to go?
So what we've done in the past has, we've gone through and identified an inventory of the types of things that we're doing. And then from there, historically, then we've gone to take a look at effectiveness. Absent another tool, I think that would be a good starting point for us to continue to document things that we've identified are culturally responsive, and then make a determination whether or not it's an activity that one we see value in, want to continue, and then start to look into how effective we're carrying that activity out or those practices out, and then look for are there opportunities to improve in that.
Okay, so we're still looking for maybe a tool or some guidance and establishing, I guess that's what, yeah,
So
okay.
I guess, as I look at it, from a standpoint of, again, what are the things that we're having, and then, there is a specific tool that we could find to determine effectiveness, could be a good next step.
I think some of that, my opinion is on some of that ties into maybe the next pillar, which is about parent engagement and community engagement. And getting, the more we can build continuous feedback from parents and families, then the way that feedback develops, whether it's through responses or surveys or people showing up to events, is actually a really good indicator, or could be a good indicator, even aside from our rubric or something, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And even having an opportunity, I use with my students, where like a baseline of where we're at in terms of like microaggressions, bias, things like that, and how we present ourselves in classrooms.
The goal here indicates that the opportunities for continued growth and improvement will be reported to the board in May. So at that time, would we expect to see sort of a picture of what has been happening, things that have been sort of added or enhanced this year and where the district would be looking to go in the next year? Is that?
So I think that could be a good time to do that.
Am I correct in understanding, I'm not sure what you mean by baseline in this case. Do you mean like what we're offering? Okay, so my brain switches to everything that we offer students, all the different opportunities we offer them. It's very different right now than it was years and years ago. It grows every year. So is that kind of what you mean by where are we now? What's our where do we begin? And then, because I don't know that I've ever seen a tool for measuring this, but that doesn't mean there isn't one.
And I'm talking about, I think what we're doing in the district, absolutely, like what all the culturally responsive teaching and activities and engagement with families of diverse cultures. But I'm talking about specifically our educators and our staff and how they're interacting with folks of different, various backgrounds. So when I'm thinking of my pre-service teachers and I'm working with them, we talk about microaggressions and bias and what that means when I present myself in the classroom, right? And so obviously politically what's going on right in our world right now, I just want to ensure that our staff is presenting culturally relevant and responsible teaching perspectives. Does that make sense?
Yeah, more, yes.
Okay.
I'd be really curious to see some examples of.
Sure.
Yeah, I really would. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. You know, this is a goal that the board added right before the work plan was approved. And now that I'm looking at it, I wonder if pillar 3 is even the right pillar for it. Pillar 3 or pillar 2. Actually, it probably could be in a bunch of them. But yeah, having some examples of what you're looking for, Emily, would be helpful because it's not really in the key performance indicators or the supporting action plans from the strategic plan.
Absolutely, you can bring some things.
Thanks.
Would it make sense for you to, it sounds like maybe you already have some things you can put your finger on, which is wonderful. Is that something that you could share with like me and Joe? Like I'm wondering if it would make sense to have an agenda item at some future point.
Yeah, there's lots of tools out there, free tools, Harvard implicit bias testing. I mean, there's
Sure.
all different kinds of.
Would you want to share some of those via email and then we can figure out when would be a good time to get it on the agenda? Does that make sense to you, Joe?
Yeah, and I think I'd really like to have input from the board before we start doing implicit bias testing of teachers and things like that. I think that should be a board directive.
Correct, and I'm not trying to force anything on anybody. It's just a simple reflection of what's happening in our world culturally and social, making sure that we're reaching and teaching all of our families.
With the way I process, I really appreciate that, and that you bring your knowledge base here. That's what, I depend on this whole board for. We all bring something different. So I really appreciate that you're going to share that with us. I will value that and take it seriously. I know I can learn and expand from it. And also, I feel like as a board, we can do a better job at making a target. We have some exemplars that we can analyze and decide where we want this district to go. So thank you.
Other questions or discussion on any of the goals in pillar 3? All right. And we are moving on to pillar 4.
Okay, we're gonna have this memorized by the time we get to pillar 5. So pillar 1 was preparing our students, pillar 2 is supporting our students, pillar 3, engaging our staff, and pillar 4, enhancing family and community partnerships. Again, a number of goals under pillar number 4, and one of the goals, and I lost my place again, this is getting to be too long of a document. What is it, about 19 pages? Let's see, here it is. Communications across the district will be improved through the implementation of Parent Square. And to talk a little bit about the Parent Square implementation, Katie Krieger, our Director of Technology.
Sure. So one of our big focuses this year is that implementation, and then we've kind of gradually worked with Parent Square to add on some additional pieces. So The easiest shift was probably just moving things from our Skylar platform to the Parent Square platform. So a lot of those communications are very much aligned to what we've been doing for a long time with having like weekly building updates sent through there. I think one of the biggest enhancements with going to Parent Square as a communication tool is the direct messaging between parents and teachers. A lot of our families really like to use this and don't like to, texting is very much the preferred method of communication over trying to have a synchronous phone call. I think that was a challenge that we were definitely facing in previous years. And so I think that's one of the probably greatest benefits in moving this direction. And then also those text messages can be translated too, so that direct communication for some of our families has provided families with a way to engage without a translator to again have to have that synchronous communication. Did you want to share anything else about messaging before I go to the other pieces?
Yes. So I think the messaging piece has gone well. I will say that we've had plenty of practice recently. A couple things I'd like to point out. Our system that we have to communicate with the transportation company, Menomonie Transportation, and then to be able to get information out to parents is so much quicker than it was. And the ability to send those alerts was very important a couple weeks ago when the bus company Ryan was out there at 4 in the morning and the roads were okay. And then the temperature dropped just a couple of degrees. Well, the buses were en route, and all of a sudden, some roads that were very passable became skating rinks. And especially, going up the hill towards the south side of town a little bit, we had buses that just could not move. It wasn't that people were in danger necessarily, but certainly delayed in the transportation. And I think we used 4 or 5 messages within about a 45-minute time period, so it was very, very effective. And that was our urgent alert piece. One thing I think we're having, I don't know if I'd call it a challenge, but something I think that we're going to have to do some more communicating on and probably some more thinking on is how we send out messages that are not urgent alerts. An example of that would have been last week with the remote learning day. We saw it coming, we saw the possibilities, we wanted to let everyone know. It wasn't to the point where I felt I needed to send an urgent alert and buzz everyone's cell phone at, 12:30 in the afternoon for a potential remote learning day, 40 hours away or 36 hours away, whatever it would have been. But some families, unless it's an urgent alert, I think the default is that they would receive all the communications in digest form at 6 o'clock at night. And I know that was a bit of an issue Thursday evening. We actually made the announcement around noon on Thursday that Friday would be a remote learning day. And we put it on all sorts of formats, social media. We sent out the alert, but it wasn't an urgent alert. And we also used our district email system. But there were some situations where I know parents were a little frustrated because they didn't receive the urgent alert that they were anticipating. Instead, it came in digest form with other communications at 6 p.m. So that is something that parents can control about how they receive the certain messages. But I also think on our end, I'm going to need to do some more evaluating in terms of even if it's not an urgent alert where cell phones need to be buzzed immediately, how do we send it in a way, one, where it comes more directly, and then also it comes where it stands out. And I did receive some comments on that as well. So everything was great, and we didn't have anybody show up not knowing it was a remote learning day. At the same time, we have the system, we want to make sure we use it the best we possibly can. So it's going well, but there's room for more improvement. Katie, Amy, did you have a question about that?
Just to what you were saying, I think the earliest you can get out is better. I know it may not be urgent, we don't want to scare parents, but I just think sometimes when you know for sure that it should be earlier, because parents are scrambling to find daycare. They have still to go to work. Just because school's closed doesn't mean they don't have to go to work. So I think it's really it's important that the earlier the better, in my mind.
I agree. Thank you.
I really would appreciate Katie said about the ability to communicate asynchronously with the teachers. To me, that's been really, really helpful. And actually, I think it's actually like, there's a lot more communication with teachers than there would be otherwise. You know, some mornings like 2 kids, 1 kid is sick, their kid's going to school, you're trying to go into the bus, their one's, you know, whatever, and being able to just message the teacher instead of trying to call them at 7:25 when they're probably getting into their room and setting things up, and everyone's in a chaotic mode. A phone call just isn't going to work, right? So being able to send a message and get a response, even if it's 10, 15 minutes later, is great, or an hour later, as long as that communication happens. One thing I was thinking about from that perspective of a parent in the morning is a lot of the guidance from the schools about like attendance is still like call the front office number and give them your student's name. And I think now, at least for me, the impulse has become send a message through Parent Square. And then the question is, well, actually, who should I send it to? Because I already have a message thread with the teacher, but really the teacher has other things to worry about, and the attendance usually goes through the front office. And I think it would be convenient, for me personally, I can't speak for everyone, but I was thinking like, if they were among the teachers list, you know, just an attendance you know, message or group or wherever it goes, maybe to the teacher and the front office, so they both know what's going on. And that way it's not like, I messaged the teacher, and they didn't see it for an hour, should I still call the front office? I don't know, you know, they'll work it out eventually, but don't want to cause extra mess between those different offices. So some of those things are conventionally over the phone that might be moving into Parent Square, making them as easy as possible.
And I think we've talked about, I believe there is in Parent Square a feature that we can turn on, and we didn't want to do it at the beginning of this year as we were learning the platform, but I think there is a feature that you can turn on that allows families then to basically send a message into the attendance, and then the clerical can look at those messages. We just had to, you know, we'll have to kind of figure out where those get directed. But I think as we were learning the tool, we didn't want to turn that on immediately at the start of the year. But I think that's something that we would definitely be.
Yeah, I was just kind of thinking like the people that when I search for like who to message, it either goes to the teacher, you know, the people I find first are the teacher or Mike. I don't think Mike wants every single email of every student every morning. Whereas there's office staff who handle that, but they don't show up prominently, you know, under the role of attendance necessarily. So.
That's a good suggestion. We'll take a look at that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I had a quick question about the translation component. Have you gotten any feedback from people who use it? And is it working quite well? And does it have all the language capacities that we need in SCMA?
The languages are based on, it uses Google Translate. So if you look at what Google provides, what languages, they're adding all the time. So as they add languages, and those become capabilities. With any kind of automatic translation, it's going to depend a little bit on how you write. If you're using a lot of idioms, it's going to struggle with it. There is a feature when you're writing your messages as the poster to kind of hit a little like AI check, and it will level down the lexile of your language so that you're writing, you know, at like an 8th grade, you know, I'll just say this is more colloquial language, we recommend kind of leveling down. It will flag some of those idioms and those things and give suggestions so that the translations are a little better. So there are some that's like an AI tool that we have enabled. So you might say, I don't want to make this change, but so you can accept and reject some of the suggestions that they give, but that is one of the capabilities just to help the poster kind of reflect on what they're sending when those translations are more important. I would say, you know, for the most part, we haven't really gotten complaints. When we first turned it on, we did have like one family reach out and they're like, some of the Hmong language translation is maybe not so great on particular messages. And I think that's when we kind of communicated with our staff too about there is this AI feature that allows you to kind of run a check. But again, you know, anytime you're doing an auto translation, it's not the same as having a person translate. But I would say they're pretty good. I mean, our urgent alerts and things like that are very straightforward. Like, you know, school's going to be closed for, you know, those things translate well for those immediate messages. Things that are longer, I think, or when you're always a little bit limited.
The text to voice is interesting. The schools are the Menomonie area. Like, oh, man.
In fairness, I've had vendors do worse. And then, while we're kind of talking about attendance too, we are in the process of starting an implementation on an add-on feature called Attendance Plus. And that really helps, or will help, as we start to integrate that, identify different levels of like truancy or like if they're at risk in attendance. So there's like 3 different attendance tiers, and it'll help track that and track any interventions. So you can see charts and graphs of like who are your top 5% of students who are absent, whose attendance is really good, where you might want to say, yeah, you're doing great, you know, or and you can send messages in mass to those different tiers. You can put, you know, when you make phone calls, so it's just another way to track and see things as a large picture. And I think, you know, as we have more academic programs that are dependent on attendance as some of those requirements to qualify for things, it's just a great way to quickly identify that, provide communication either in mass or individually based on those situations. So I think that will really help from a data perspective too. And then the last thing.
One more piece.
Yeah, one more piece. But wait, there's more. We are also working on shifting our website to the Parent Square sites. And so through community surveying, through staff surveying, we've kind of identified what that general template is going to look like. And now we're in the process of looking at what we're going to have them bring over and what we're going to have to work what work we're going to have to do to transfer content to the new site. But I think some features that were important in that survey and that we already kind of made sure that are worked into the design is, first, it's inherently going to be mobile friendly, which is probably the biggest piece of feedback we received, is that a lot of people are viewing that on their phones, and our current website does not scale very well. So this is going to scale much better. That is something that we looked at before we selected that design. There'll be a lot more opportunities for different quick links in the menus. And another thing that's really nice is any messages that are urgent alerts can automatically be pushed into the website.
Any more questions or discussion on Parent Square? Thank you for all of that, Katie. Any questions or discussion on other goals within Pillar 4? Great. I also should just say I love Parent Square as a parent, so it's been a really great tool and really appreciate all the work that went into it and how seamlessly it has been to use. All right, we move on to Pillar 5.
Yes, Pillar 5, the final pillar. And say it with me. No, I'm kidding.
You have to say the last one.
No, Pillar 1, preparing our students. Pillar 2, supporting our students. Pillar 3, engaging our staff. Pillar 4, enhancing family and community partnerships. And then Pillar 5, operating efficiently and effectively. And Eric Nelson, our Director of Business Services, is going to talk a little bit about the goal that the board just really accomplished tonight, and that was approval of the 30-year plan. Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, so in the middle of page 18, it talks about working with the 30-year capital improvement plan. And as Joe said, if you recall, Kevin and Brendan introduced the 30-year plan to the board, and then earlier in the meeting, of course, you approved the updated 30-year facilities plan. So that's great news, and it allows us to move forward on a number of projects in the coming months. So building on that long-range plan, we are once again using the budget input tool. And if you recall, this was introduced last year. And this tool gives all staff an opportunity to submit ideas and needs for consideration as we develop the 26-27 budget. And just helping us ensure those requests are aligned also with district priorities. So over the next month, I will be visiting each school's staff to reintroduce the tool, explain how to find it, how to fill out the form, and just encourage staff to share their ideas. So this approach supports transparency, staff engagement, and helps us align our short and long-term goals for our budgeting process.
Is that tool like both a push and a pull, or just a pull? In the sense, like, is it looking for, ideas for cost savings, or here's something we really wish we had another $1,000 to invest in some program so we could do this one thing?
It's both. Yeah, it's both saving, looking for savings, but also how can we better use funds to serve students.
There's a lot of push and not a lot of pull.
Based on how that went last year, are you making any changes to kind of how you're rolling it out and how you're doing it this year?
So I think I got 16 responses last year, and I've only went to one school so far, and I've already gotten 11 responses, so that's really good news. And we were able to do some things last year. One of the things was opportunities for clerical to go to Skyward Conference. So we allocated more money for that. Copiers being more efficient while holding costs down. We added some items to the 30-year facilities plan, or at least reprioritized them. The wheels were already turning for the near-site clinic, but someone did suggest that, and that was obviously something we were able to accomplish. The one thing I did, if they filled out the form, I responded to them. We can't do everything, but if they took the time to fill out the form, I responded to them, at the end and said, thank you for your feedback. This is where this sits right now. If it's something that's important the next year, if we weren't able to fulfill it, please feel free to fill out another form again next time.
Will you be able to keep doing that if the number of responses grows exponentially?
I think so.
Okay, great. I think that's yeah, go ahead.
I can make the time.
I think that's great, and I think it's really, I'm glad you're able to give some examples of input that was provided for that form and the results that can come of it. Like, it's really nice to see that play out, so I appreciate that. Any questions regarding the 30-year plan or the budget building process or anything else within Pillar 5?
Dale, do you have comments on the strategic plan, work plan that you want to talk about, if you missed it?
Dale is in the in the Google Doc, so
Okay.
you know that. He's looking. All right. Did you have anything else to say about the work plan? Great. So we have gotten through the major goals and activities for 2025-26. And we can move on to a review of the preliminary staffing and course offering timeline for 2026-27.
So we can take as much time as the board wants on these items, but at the same time, a number of these items are informational. For instance, the preliminary staffing and course offering timeline, Brian did a great job on this. This is the same timeline and process that we've used now for over a decade. Brian, is there anything you want to point out specific on this for the board, unless there's questions?
The only thing that I'll point out is we are squarely in the registration process. I'll be meeting with Principal Drake and high school staff in the coming week here to review initial registration requests, which is a step closer to them building that schedule for next school year and looking at what staffing needs are necessary, and then that kind of starts the process moving forward at a little more rapid pace between now and, quite frankly, the end of April.
And we should point out that the next board meeting, February 9th, the board will see an initial recommendation for courses to run at the high school.
And the other big, I think, date for board purposes is that March 9th board meeting when we would start to discuss the preliminary staffing plan. Any questions or discussion on the staffing and course offering timeline? At this stage, I really appreciate how consistently this happens every year. It's very helpful to me to know that, so I appreciate being given the reminder. All right, next up, we have a review annual professional development report.
All right, so this is an annual report that we come forward with each year at this time of the year. And really, it's an opportunity to highlight both the PD offerings that are underway within the school district. And in the background is a document that really takes us, starting in the summer and working our way all the way through to the end of the school year, the different types of professional development. Most common, is our PD days. We just had one on Monday of last week. And have several of those, scheduled throughout the course of the year with various priorities. But then also, in addition, we do have opportunities to have individual presenters or trainers come in and work with small staff groups on various topics, or staff attend trainings, whether that be through CISA, the Association of Wisconsin School Administrators, in different professional organizations also offer a lot of training. Our CISA trainings happen both in district, virtually, and at CISA, primarily with CISA 11. However, over the years, as you're familiar with last year, we utilize the other CISAs for some areas of expertise that they have. A few items that I do want to point out specific for this year. One of the things that we've heard over the years is a desire on the part of staff to identify opportunities both in and out of the district to participate in professional learning and training. So this year, we spent the first part of the year taking a look at our process for staff to request professional development participation outside of the district. That's an opportunity that's been available, going back, predating my time in the district. And it's not very often that a staff member, when they come forward with something that aligns to a building or department goal or strategic plan, where there hasn't been an opportunity for them to participate at some point in time, may not be on an annual basis, but at some point in time. But based off the feedback, we did develop a protocol that was rolled out to staff right after the first of the year. Again, based on feedback, we were able to come up with that process and update it. Since rolling it out, we've had a handful of staff fill out that form, and we'll be reviewing that administratively, to see where that fits. A couple of other items I want to note when we take a look. We do continue to receive very positive feedback on the flexibility that we provide within our PD offerings and tailoring them to employment classifications. That was an area that was identified a couple of years ago, specific to hourly staff, to enhance some of our PD offerings. So we've spent quite a bit of time working on that at the different levels, and we continue to look for ways to maximize those opportunities for our hourly staff as well as our teaching staff as well. It's kind of interesting, over the last, I would say, 3 years, we have started to see professional development feedback, I'll say, kind of, broaden in the scope of the type of feedback, to the point where we'll have a large number that are requesting lots of flexibility and choice in what the offerings look like, at the same time receiving an increasing number of staff who are saying, reduce the number of choices and competing options that are available. If it's something that's important for me to participate in, just make sure that that's the thing that's offered. So it's kind of interesting to see how that is kind of positioning the offerings against themselves. So we'll continue to study that and kind of move forward with participating both with surveys, but also our QIC process and our PD committee, and working with our principals. But with that, I'll go ahead and open it up for questions.
Thanks. I'm really glad you mentioned the idea of like PD outside the district and also observing like the change of needs and interests of the staff. One thing that I've been thinking about is last couple meetings, Joe's pointing out how our staff is now very young. And a lot of, as we have teachers retire after decades of experience and we bring in new energetic teachers in their first few years of a teaching career, I think in those early career moments, it's incredibly important to like get out, go to conferences across the country, and meet with the best people in your field in ways that, as someone gets kind of more, gains their own experience, but also kind of knows how they want to do things. Sometimes we'll settle into more, let me like get the PD I need and move on. But I think for the younger people, at least in the experience I have in my career, in my field, those first 3 to 5 years, getting to every conference and every place I could possibly go, just broadened my mind what my job was all about in incredible ways. I think not only kind of approving those out of district things, but really encouraging them, especially for the younger people, would be really helpful as we kind of get as much, get people who are here and young as experienced as they possibly can be in a world-class way, and then keep them here. I think is like the best option.
Michelle's 2 cents here. I am happy to hear that educators are encouraged to go outside of the district again. I was happy to see that they went to Turtle Lake, the middle school team, because not only for the reason of getting out of your little pond, but when staff can enjoy that together, it creates community. It reinvigorates them, it energizes them, and I never stopped wanting to do that even at year 30, because education's ever changing. There's always new things to learn, and if we are only doing things within our own district and teaching each other, then we don't get those outside things. The biggest example I have is actually you, Joe. You came back from a conference you had gone to, and it was for superintendents, and it was about AI. And I'll tell you, the next time I saw you, I think it was at the next board meeting, you looked like a kid in the candy store. You were so excited about the topic and what you had learned, but it wasn't something you would have found here at an ed camp within our own walls. It was something you had to go get and then bring back, and then look how that's been leveraged. Because when we bring all those things back from elsewhere and we share them out, that's where the magic happens. And that's where we continue to grow as educators. And trust me, we have a lot of staff that are not first few years teachers. They want to go and they want to learn. And that's the stuff that we want as well, everyone.
Yeah, and I think we all agree on that. And like Brian said, we've always encouraged PD, and I don't think I can remember hardly ever someone asking to go to something where we didn't try to make it work. I will say we have to be much more careful during the school year. With only 172 days, we need to prioritize having our staff with our kids, but especially when we talk about the PD days that we have available, or when we talk about the summer, we definitely have a lot more opportunities for PD during those times, and those are the ones that are a lot easier to approve.
I also want to just mention, something you said, Brian, about kind of that option always having been available, but I really appreciate the development of this protocol. Like, I think it makes it a lot more transparent for how people can access that, have access to those opportunities. And I think more transparency can help lead to more equity in that too, so that people know that everybody has the opportunity to request this. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I am going to push back a little bit. Geez, this might be a first for me. There have been some years where we felt as educators that we needed to curtail what we were asking to go out of the district to do. And it's not a finger point thing, it's a subbing issue. I mean, how can teachers be gone if we don't have people to teach our children? And financial too, it's expensive. It's expensive to pay to go, it's expensive to pay to stay, it's expensive to continue to pay the teacher and then pay a sub. And so, you know, there are a lot of factors, I understand that, but I will also say that there are a lot of extremely powerful things that happen during this school year that would be worth and have always been worth sending staff to. Even if it's a small team, so they can bring it back. Like, and the examples jumping out at me are the title conference, the math convention, those things, and slate. Those things are all things that happen during the school days in districts sending their staff. And you learn so much there, not just from the presenters that are there, but also the other people from other districts that you can network with. These are opportunities as well for our staff to shine because they can present, and a lot of our staff have done that in the past. So I don't know if this is a turning and we're kind of shifting backwards or back to, you know, as much as we used to be able to do, because we used to be able to do a lot with the Reading First funding and, you know, funding that we don't have anymore. So I understand it's not ever probably going to be the same as it used to be, but it can still be good.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. So to clarify, I'm talking like the last 10 years or so. Yeah, there used to be a huge teachers convention in October, and you know, a lot of teachers would go to it. Well, that's not even available anymore. You know, I guess what I also would say is that if someone identifies an area, and I agree that all those conferences you mentioned were good, but we don't necessarily have to. A lot of times there's multiple professional ways to get the professional development, and if we can prioritize something where teachers don't have to miss time with kids, that would be something that I would prefer, but I realize that's not always possible.
I hear your point, it's noted, but I respectfully disagree. No, I think it is important for them to be in front of our students with fresh, bounding ideas, ready to be energized for future instruction.
I would just like to say that it's a balancing act. You know, maybe you need to send, you know, maybe it needs to be, you know, a rotation, like these teachers can go to this, and maybe the next semester these teachers can go to that, or some form to make it so that it's balanced and not, you know, losing a lot of classroom time too. Because I see both sides, but you're right.
I do think the upside is, I think our teachers are really good at sharing. So even if, you know, nothing compares to these conferences. Like, they're amazing. Like, getting to go to the music. I didn't go as a teacher, but I went during my college years, and it was like incredible. That like is an experience I would never get anywhere else. But anything you learn there, our teachers are very like more than willing to share with others. So I think it is a good investment. So I see what you're saying.
Any additional questions or discussion on the professional development report? Great. Thank you very much. Next up, we are going to review our board and administration report from the State Education Convention. So we have a 9-page summary of workshops and events that members attended. If there are folks who want to mention some highlights, things that are worth sharing. Go ahead.
So I was wondering if I should share this earlier when we talked about the strategic planning goals and activities, or during this section, it seemed this made more sense. Something that we discussed, and I think, you know, we put a lot of emphasis this summer on when we put together the strategic planning goals and activities, was about making sure we have, let me actually find the item if it's here somewhere. So we have an item in, I think, Pillar 4. Information will be gathered from a variety of sources across the district to determine next steps for providing streamlined and continuous support for students and families with diverse backgrounds, current initiatives, recommendations, etc. And there's been a lot of work on that. As it happens, I think a lot of people left the conference early because of the weather. I ended up staying through Friday morning, and Friday morning I went to 2 back-to-back sessions that were just phenomenal. The first one was about engaging parents, and the second one was about engaging students. and they were by kind of two different districts who had used the same system. And a lot of it is the sorts of things that, Casey talked about in terms of mentorship among different levels. And, but I think there were some, I can't summarize it all here, obviously, there's 2-hour-long discussions, but some really, I think, brilliant ideas to actually get at the heart of some of the things that you were raising, Emily, about like how do we like genuinely engage. I remember last summer we were talking about the work plan, like how do we genuinely engage with families beyond just having like a quote diversity committee, but like actually like make sure we're actually serving their needs. And it looks like, it seemed to me based on these presentations that these couple of districts had really kind of cracked the code on that, on how to actually get parents honest feedback in ways that was about sharing experience and building bonds, and then also integrating that with student mentorship from grade school to middle school to high school in a way that also helps students with different levels of different medical challenges, different backgrounds, different family stories, to find teachers they connect with. They kind of took every student as an adult in the building that they trust and would go to for problems, kind of took that idea and really just like ran with it to build those relationships up based on some of those connections and personal histories. So that was very impressive. So I grabbed some cards, I'll give them to you afterwards, but there's someone who used to work at CISA 6 on initiatives like this, and then started a nonprofit to basically take that work and move it beyond just the CISA 6 area. And that, it was pretty impressive. So I think there are some really interesting ideas out there on how to really genuinely do that parent and student outreach in ways that prevents and mitigates bullying, builds bonds between different age groups, builds a culture of inclusion and belonging was the word we kept on using. So yeah, to me that was like, I'm really glad I stuck through Friday morning for those 2 sessions.
Anyone else want to share something that was a highlight? Go ahead.
I stayed for the whole entire thing and went to every session I possibly could because I love this convention. And I learned so much. Sometimes I come home and my head is spinning because I've got so much information that I always enjoy it. I really can't think of anything that really highlights other than the fact that every session that I went to had some merit. And since we're going to be talking about school vouchers, I know I went to the thing that Green Bay was there and they actually showed how they got the vouchers on the tax bill, so it was transparent for people to know what was going out to the private schools for vouchers. So I think that was really helpful and for our next thing that we're going to talk about. And also I think the first keynote was probably the best of the 3 keynote speakers I saw. She was really good. ESPN reporter, started at a very young age, the youngest ever, and she had quite a story to tell, but it wasn't so much about her life at ESPN, although that was part of it, but it was how public education really helped her family out because she had 3 children, and the middle child had lots of anxiety, depression, and how the school districts, really stepped up to the plate and helped this kid learn how to belong. So that was, to me, very moving, and a few tears.
If I could just follow up on that, I agree that keynote was terrific. The sense of belonging, and I know that's something that we've been prioritizing here, is trying to provide that opportunity for all of our kids to have a sense of belonging in our schools. But I'd also like to point out that Eric and I had a very productive meeting with our financial advisor from Baird, and especially with some of the discussions we've recently had about our long-term debt and the future planning that we need to have. So the team from Baird is actually going to come up here in March and present to the board. One, to kind of just show the board and our community how we've handled long-term debt and the position that it's put us in, and then also so that we can start planning ahead. It's not something that needs to be decided in the next few months, but we are going to have to make some decisions moving forward about how we want to really maximize value for our taxpayers while meeting the needs of our school districts. So I appreciated Eric being there, and I thought that was a very good use of time.
In the wee hours of Thursday morning, I attended the WASB breakfast and got to hear the keynote there, Dave Weber. He was amazing. He's an internationally recognized speaker and a motivational speaker. I think the title, I want to say the title was, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. It was so good. His major message was about stress and how it impacts us and how we can recognize the different stages of it. But he was hysterical and had us all just laughing, and just a great presenter, and the topic was amazing. I actually was messaging Brian during the session with pictures of slides and stuff, saying, you need to bring him into the district. He's phenomenal. He's going to be in the area in August next year. So, yeah, highly recommend.
A highlight for me was the delegate assembly meeting that went pretty well. I thought it's typically scheduled for 2 hours. That's like the pie in the sky dreaming, I think. And then we actually got done in 2 hours and 20 minutes. So that was nice. And there were quite a few resolutions that passed that I was surprised about. There was one about universal meals for students in Wisconsin that passed. And 4 years ago, it created such an issue that they lost quorum. Progress, I suppose. And it was interesting. I think one thing to note is like anything that passes is not like it's a law. And I think maybe not even everyone in the delegate assembly understood that. But it does mean that those are the things that WASB is taking from representatives of all the districts in our state to lobby for and ask for. So it was a pretty nice, smooth assembly.
Thank you for being our delegate, and I'm really glad it went well. Did you want to say anything about that other workshop you were just typing on there?
Yes. Another workshop that I went to that I was super stoked about was the Share Your Story, the Why, What, and How hosting a legislative day. So the Stoughton Area School District, I think annually, hosts an elected officials day. And in that session, I just learned so many practical things about what it could look like to do that here. Because I know, I think Emily and Michelle and I went to the WASB one last year where we went to Madison. And I just kind of left it feeling like, I don't know, it was a lot of effort. And it didn't really feel, I felt like I learned some things, but it didn't feel like you were really connecting with your legislators in like a school personal way. And this session really showed how you can invite people in and share the story of what your district looks like. And they invite not only their federal elected officials, but their state elected officials, and then any leaders in the community as well. And as we've experienced going through a referendum and just working on connecting with our community more, I think oftentimes I lose perspective of like not everybody knows what like the inside of the school looks like. So like when we talk about summer school, I'm like remembering like teaching summer school, you know, like which is a little different than even sending your kids there or like having no connection to it. And so I just think that potentially hosting a legislative day, while more work than us going to Madison, would also probably feel better and maybe do a little more.
Thank you. Any other final thoughts? Or I guess I don't have to be final, but if anyone else wants to share about their convention experience. Go ahead.
There's another one done by Ann Chapman of Wasbo on the price of peril systems, how policy shapes K-12 education systems. And you know, I'm always fascinated by the WASBO, the business officers' talks because it's so much based in really carefully analyzing what's happened in different places and with different experiences and really digging into, what can we project or expect in Wisconsin. And that talk was, to me, very striking because they now have lots of data about how different approaches to education funding around the country have played out over the last decade. Starting in the 90s, there were, these first initiatives with school choice and then with voucher systems, and those have gradually expanded, but also state by state and year by year in the same state, kind of the laws change over time, and kind of taking different case studies of how different funding mechanisms have worked in, say, Ohio or Arizona or Wisconsin or Minnesota or other states, and seeing what impact has it had on both the statewide budget and on the education budget and on the funding per student in those schools. So that was a deeply fascinating talk, and it's interesting because that talk was happening at the same time that the delegate assembly was talking about the question of decoupling. I'm not sure how that worked out, but in terms of that discussion in the delegate assembly, but this question of that's I think currently being discussed at the state level pretty extensively is, should, when it comes to the voucher system, should continue to be tied to the state, to the public school system, or be treated in an entirely independent way. And they had very striking numbers about how that decision has played out in other states in pretty extreme ways. So I won't pull up all the charts right now, but the amount of information in that talk was absolutely phenomenal. I'm always impressed by Ann Chapman and Wasbo overall.
I believe the delegate assembly, so decoupling was, there were two resolutions, one was for and against. And so first we had to vote, and we voted, well, now I forgot how they're wording, but they essentially voted against decoupling.
I also attended that same one with Faith, and I was amazed too. They always do a great job.
Well, thank you, everybody, for taking the time to go. Thanks to...
Can I say one more thing?
Oh, yes, sure, can.
Also, it's funny, this ties into our previous discussion about PD, but like, look how long we can talk about like all the ideas and the excitement we have and like going to a place. It's very important.
And some people have been on the board a long time and are still invigorated by voting.
I could tell a story about Michelle, but I won't.
You can save that for the parking lot. Yeah, so thanks to everybody who went. Thanks to SDMA for the support to make it happen. Thank you, Jenny, for arranging literally everything.
Yes.
I appreciate it very much. Moving on. Next up, we have a review of our annual board member attendance report. This is just an informational report. I assume this will be moved to the public side of board docs in the future if folks in the community want to know what our attendance has looked like for the last year. Any questions or discussion?
I'll just say, Rachel, the board does a great job being at every meeting.
I just want to say something. This happened at the convention. Abe was there, and I think you were there too. When they were giving the awards for school board members, there was a school board member that had been a member for 50 years. And not only 50 years, but she had perfect attendance at all the meetings.
2 years. What district?
Even the person that was saying that looked at that and said, I had to look at this twice. It was hard to believe.
Yes, as Joe said, this board does an excellent job of attending meetings. I don't think any of us is going to get that award. But that's fine.
That's your private responsibility.
Yeah, that's true. If there's no other questions or discussion on our attendance report, next up we have a discussion on next step for advancing voucher transparency. So after our last meeting, when we had Chris Humbuck-Boyle here, we discussed a few possibilities as to how we can move forward. And I guess maybe now would be a good time to decide, what do we want to put on the agenda, and what are the steps we want to take next. there was one of the things that, one of the tasks that would be before us if we wanted to go down this route would be to start to think about resolutions and the draft wording we want to use. We would also need to think about how we want to approach this and with regard to choosing where to start with municipalities or the county or different governmental levels. Do folks have thoughts?
I would say start with the city of Menomonie. Green Bay, they had like 7 municipalities also in their thing, but they said that they chose to go to the city because that was the biggest amount of people. And then the municipalities are coming on shortly. I think they had 2 that have already signed on for next year, and then they were trying to get the rest of them to go as well. So I think starting with the city would be the most important thing, and then maybe branch out to the municipalities at some point.
Does that resonate with others? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I personally think we should give it a shot. I think Amy is right that starting with the city makes sense, the way Menomonie and Dunn County is structured. I feel like the next step is to figure out what sort of, like, to go to them and start having a discussion, we should have some amount of, oh, I'm sorry. So to go to them and have that discussion, we should have some amount of language and examples of what a tax bill would look like ready, so that it's not just like an abstract thing that we have to introduce from scratch, but like, right now the tax bill looks like this. We think it'd be, you know, it would be interesting if it looked like this instead. What do you think? So we actually have, you know, a side-by-side PDF of what that would look like. So I think they would kind of start with that, to have an artifact for a conversation. And that doesn't even necessarily need like the legalese of the language, which may could be worked out over time in conjunction with the city. It would have to be, but just like, here's what the goal is, as a clearly stated example. And that way, at least we have something to talk about. I think if we were to go into those conversations without an artifact or some sort of draft language, it would be very hard to explain what the concern is and why they should care. So.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So as an example, we could put it on a future, put it on a meeting in February. We could bring in a number of samples to look at and sort of decide as a board what's the direction we want to go. I mean, Chris mentioned I think a lot of different, not a lot, but several different options, for how we might be asking for language to be put on, a sense of what that language is and sort of where it goes. So I think to your point, Abe, we would want to agree on a first choice strategy for that before, is that kind of what you're saying? We want to have, not to say that it couldn't change in conversation with the city, but that we would want to have something that is our starting point.
Yeah, I think there has to be something to look at, which is a starting point. I think it's probably more effective if that is an example of, like if we're talking with someone in city administration, pick a few, you can, on Dunn County GIS, you can pull up everyone's tax bill, right? So you can pull up, 3 or 4 example tax bills and say, what if it had this line here? Mm-hmm. Right? What do you think about that? Does that make sense to you? And that way there's something to talk about that's concrete. And maybe even, like put one into Adobe Illustrator, insert an example line in red saying, here's the sort of line we want to add, or the way we want to notate it. Then that can come even before, like, what's the right legal language in which to present that needs to be vetted by a lawyer. Because then they get really much into the weeds of legalese. I think it's just, here's what the bill looks like, here's what it could look like. Does it seem reasonable to you as a good way to start that conversation?
I'm wondering if any of that would be in the toolkit. I would have to look back at
I
it.
was just gonna say, that aligns really well.
There's a
with
toolkit
the first
from
step.
WP, and also,
Yeah.
if I can find the slides from the Green Bay, what they did, they actually put it in where there was the comment section because they didn't have any other place to put it. And that was an argument, and then they finally decided that's where they would put it. So, I mean, that's one thing. But I think that, as long with the resolution that we need to come up with, and then once we have those things in place, then I think then you start to talk to maybe the city council or county board or whatever.
Dominique, do you want to finish your thought there?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, the first step in the toolkit is sort of like assembling the information you would need. And so I know that like, we're basically aware of like the numbers of how much the vouchers are and like what it could look like, but sort of putting that all together so we have the same information to go out when we start talking to people, I think is also part of that first step.
And so those steps would happen before we start to draft a resolution. Is that sort of where we're all?
I think so.
Yeah, absolutely. So for our, for our next meeting, we could assemble in board docs a few examples from the, WePen has those in the toolkits. There's, like I said, a few different places and ways they've done that. So we could have those also looked at together, discuss what our first, what we would ideally like to see, and then maybe also at that point, would we want to start a communications plan? So thinking about who do we want to start to have conversations with? Go ahead.
Along the lines of what you were saying, Dominique, I think it is really important for us to work together to articulate very, very clearly what our why is, so that when, we're presenting an artifact or multiple artifacts, however we want to do that, we are very clear about why we are requesting further support with this.
It's all about transparency, and that's what they say to use, because otherwise you might have pushback. Because some people think, well, you're against school choice. I mean, it just can go down a rabbit hole.
I wonder along those lines if it would be advantageous to make the resolution early in the process. Because one, the resolution could identify the clear numbers that the board is going to share, so everyone's sharing the same numbers. It also could be a kicking off point when meeting with individuals to say, us as a board unanimously, or whatever the vote was, pass this resolution to invite you to partner with us for transparency. That could be one way to do it, is to really focus on the resolution, and then from there, that would be an artifact along with some sample tax bills to go to the city with.
And as you described that, would the resolution not necessarily then have to contain the language that we're requesting to be added? Or is that something we would need to, I wonder if we would need to settle on that language before we pass a resolution? Or could we pass a resolution that does not set the language out?
Well, the city, ultimately, it's the city that has to vote on the taxing language. So I think I feel like we can explain what the concern is, what the goal is, and offer them language. And if we think it's necessary, we as a board can vote on presenting certain language to them. But the thing that's interesting about this process is that, we're essentially coming to the municipality or the city as a interested party, asking for them to have a motion and for them to have a new, item on their agenda. And so that we have to, engage as a third party in their agenda setting process, and what language they're comfortable with. If they have I know at the city, for example, the city staff have played a huge role in drafting language of resolutions to make sure they're legal and verified and all this stuff. And so I think we could offer an example of the sort of language we're looking for, but there would be a point where it's handed off to them and it disappears for 2 months as they work on it. And we'll have to engage with that, respecting their process. So.
For example, Eau Claire's resolution that got passed in November this past fall, it has the whereas, laying out all the information. And then at the end, it says, therefore be resolved that the Board of Education of the Eau Claire Area School District requests the City of Eau Claire and surrounding municipalities in the district's attendance area to include annually on their property tax bills the amount, and then it goes on. So essentially, the resolution is requesting them to do that, and the beginning of the resolution is saying why.
Okay, so then, so a next meeting could be drafting that resolution. And then laying out a communications plan, or no, whatever you want to call it, outreach plan. Okay.
And there are 4 sample resolutions on page 9 of the toolkit
Okay,
from Eau Claire, Green Bay, Superior, and Washburn.
great. So we can have those ready to look at and tackle next time. Oh, great.
Thank you. Also, just to let you know, there were 9 districts that are in the process of doing this now across the state. There has also been for the past 3 or 4 years, there's been, the legislature has always brought this to, but it never gets anywhere. Just not voted on or anything. That it should be for the whole state, but who knows what will happen in the future.
Thanks for that. All right, next up, we have a review of extracurricular staff contract requests. This is information only. Does anyone have any questions or discussion related to the extracurricular contract requests? All right. And then we're moving on to items related to next meeting dates, board committees, and reports. The QIC committee meets February 2nd here at the ASC at 3:50. Board members who are part of that committee know who they are. Wonderful. No school for students and staff on February 6th. Our regular school board meeting is February 9th. Special school board meeting February 23rd. Regular school board meeting March 9th, and then spring break is March 16th through 20th. That doesn't seem like it should be as soon as it is. We have a closed session scheduled for tonight, so I'd like to suggest we take a 5-minute recess, and the board will reconvene in closed session.